Welcome to this rapid review. If you are a stressed out medical student staring down your upcoming pediatric rotation, or maybe an anxious parent trying to figure out if your little one is on track, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're diving straight into the crazy baby story, the absolute ultimate clinical milestone hack. Stressed about memorizing baby milestones for your clinical exams? Yeah, we've all been there. Staring at those giant textbook grids of ages and skills until your eyes literally cross is not the way to learn. And it's definitely not the way to remember things when you're under the high pressure of an exam. Rote memory just vanishes when you panic. But a good story, that sticks forever. So I promise you, by the end of this explainer, you'll have a funny, cute, and completely logical story locked in your brain that will make recalling these milestones totally effortless. All right, let's jump right into section 1. 2 to 9 months, melting hearts, and clinical stress. So, to kick off our story, picture this chronological timeline. We are hitting 4 major check-ins here: 2, 4, 6, and 9 months. Picture this. At exactly 2 months, mom's maternity and confinement period is finally over. She is super stressed about going back to work, right? So, what does our clever little baby do? They use their very first genuine social smile just to melt mom's stress away. So 2 months equals social smile and cooing. Boom. Fast forward to 4 months. Month number 4 is April. Dad decides to pull a ridiculous April Fool's joke. The baby really wants to see Dad's face and laugh at this joke. So what do? They hold their little head up super strong. 4 months, April Fool's joke, meaning good head control. Now we're at 6 months, and our baby is eyeing that avocado puree. They want solid food. But, you can't really eat solids lying flat on your back, right? So they learn to sit up with support to enjoy those meals. 6 months means sitting with support. Then, bam, we hit 9 months. Month 9 is September, which just happens to be the dreaded month of mom's clinical competence exam. Mom actually brings the baby into the exam hall. The baby sits alone on a chair, completely unsupported now. But then they look up, see the terrifying examiner, and immediately get stranger anxiety. To cope, they start playing peekaboo under the table and eventually pull themselves up to stand by clinging to mom's leg. So 9 months, sits unsupported, stranger anxiety, peekaboo, and pull to stand. Moving right along to the next phase, 1 to 3 years, the mini tornado phase. Here's our roadmap for the toddler years, tracking the evolution from a 1-year-old all the way to a 3-year-old. Boom! It's the 1-year mark. Time for the very first birthday party, and our little protagonist has to show off their party tricks for all the guests. So, what are the tricks? First, they point straight at that birthday cake. Then, they wave bye-bye to the guests. They finally drop their first meaningful word, Mama. And for the grand finale, showing off those fine motor skills, they use a perfect little pincer grip to pick up cake crumbs off the table while cruising around the living room furniture. So remember, 1 year means pointing, waving, a meaningful word, pincer grip, and cruising. 6 months later, at 18 months, our baby is basically walking around looking for trouble. This is full-on mini tornado mode. They're walking really well all over the house, completely unsupervised. They find a crayon and just scribble all over the walls. They're speaking a handful of words by now, and we even see the very beginnings of early pretend play as they try to feed a teddy bear their leftover snacks. So, 18 months, walks well, scribbles, says several words, and starts early pretend play. Now, here is where the numbers literally do the work for you. At 2 years old, we hit the terrible 2s. The kid has demands, and they use exactly 2 words to make them. Want milk. 2 years equals 2-word phrases. They also dive into true pretend play here, like hosting a full-blown tea party. And at 3 years old, you guessed it, 3 words. They're busting out 3-word sentences, like, I want milk. Plus, what vehicle has exactly 3 wheels? A tricycle. A 3-year-old can pedal a tricycle and get into imaginative play, like playing doctor. The numbers just hand you the clinical milestones. Next section, 4 to 5 years, the final boss. Let's look at the timeline for our last 2 major milestones, hitting ages 4 and 5. All right, at 4 years old, our kid is heading off to kindergarten. But they don't just walk there, they hop like a frog. 4 years equals hopping. They're also playing cooperatively with their little friends, telling these long, rambling stories, and they can finally copy a cross shape on paper. Then,
At 5 years old, they've become the final boss, a totally school-ready boss baby. They can follow strict rules, speak incredibly fluently, dress themselves with barely any help, skip around, and actually play games that have real rules. 5 years equals school readiness and fluent speech. Our baby made it.
Which brings us to the super sticky mnemonic and rap. Okay, if you're ever going to take a mental snapshot, do it right now. Look at this clean, direct connection between our crazy story keywords and the actual clinical milestones. 2 months is the smile. 4 is the April Fool's head control. 6 is the solid food sit. 9 is the September clinical exam anxiety. 12 is the birthday party tricks. 18 is the walking troublemaker. 2 is the 2-word demand for milk. 3 is the 3-wheel tricycle. 4 is the hopping frog. And 5 is the school bus. You see how perfectly that lines up? Let's lock this whole thing in with a little rhythm. Say this with me in your head. 2 smile, mom finishes confinement. 4 April Fool, look at dad. 6 want solids, sit up steady. 9 clinical exams, stranger anxiety. 1-year party, point at the cake. 18 months, walking looking for trouble. 2 years, say want milk. 3 years, tricycle for you. 4 years, hop to kindergarten. 5 years, school bus, your milestone journey is through. Seriously, say that to yourself a couple of times while brushing your teeth, and you will literally never blink on these again. Moving into the serious stuff. Warning, the red flag checklist. All right, here is the absolutely crucial don't wait rule. Knowing when a kid hits a milestone is fantastic, sure, but as a clinician, your real job is catching when they don't. If a baby isn't smiling by 3 months, that is a glaring red flag for visual or neurological issues. Poor head control at 4 months, you need to be thinking hypotonia. Not sitting independently by 9 months, that's a gross motor delay. No pointing or waving by their first birthday, that is a massive red flag for autism spectrum disorder or hearing issues. Not walking or speaking any meaningful words by 18 months, don't wait. And no pretend play by age 2, highly concerning for social communication deficits. Let's look at this stark contrast for a second. At 12 months, a normal baby is pointing to share interest and waving goodbye. The red flag is the absolute absence of those gestures. I know it might seem like a small thing, but a 12-month-old who doesn't point or respond to their name needs an immediate screening for hearing loss or ASD. And guys, I literally cannot stress this enough. Regression at any age, meaning if a child learns a skill like speaking or walking and then suddenly loses it, that is an absolute urgent, drop-everything red flag that needs an immediate pediatric neurology evaluation. No exceptions. Okay, let's wrap this up with the Quick Pass Clinical Examiner script. So when your examiner eventually asks for your management plan, you look them dead in the eye and say exactly this. I will assess the child in 4 domains: gross motor, fine motor, speech language, and social adaptive development. I will actively check for red flags, such as developmental regression, hearing or vision problems, and safeguarding concerns. I will not falsely reassure the parents if there is a significant delay, and I will refer early for pediatric assessment and allied health support. Boom. Mic drop. That one sentence beautifully packages our crazy story into a total clinical home run. It shows maturity, it shows you prioritize safety, and it proves you know your stuff. And that brings us to the end of our developmental journey. From that 2-month post-maternity smile to the 5-year-old kindergarten boss, you've now got the tools, the crazy story, and the exact clinical phrasing to absolutely crush this topic. So I'll leave you with this. Instead of dreading that pediatric milestone station, what if you actually walked into the exam room hoping it's the very first question they ask you? Are you ready to face the examiner? I definitely think you are. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and keep crushing it out there.